Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Angela O'Hare, your favorite Las Vegas realtor.
And I'm Rob Howe, Rockstar Realtor. What's up?
Yeah. And, Rob had been away for the weekend
Mhm.
and, a lot has happened in the whole real estate industry. So we thought it would be great to go live and really explain what exactly happened with the NAR settlement, because mainstream media is blowing this way out of proportion. And we want to give you from the horse's mouth the truth, right? Because there's so many people saying all these things, right? And a lot of people are believing all these things, but in reality is they haven't really looked at the settlement and what was really happened, right? So we want to go over what happened with the settlement, why they settled, as well as how it affects buyers and sellers in today's market.
Biggest thing to me is how does that affect you?
Yes.
So this is what, to me, our conversation will be rooted around is how you as a seller or you as a buyer can take advantage or just have a better understanding of what's happening.
Perfect. So I have notes and we're going to probably just be reading from these notes. Basically on Friday, March 15th, the National Association of Realtors, which we call NAR, announced a surprising $418 million settlement with a nationwide group of home sellers. The settlement aims to resolve claims in multiple antitrust class actions against the NAR. These lawsuits accuse the NAR of several of the nation's largest residential real estate brokerage companies of requiring home sellers to pay inflated real estate fees. Okay. And what was the suit really about? Do you want to read it?
Well, what the suit, the claims center around NAR's implementation of a buyer broker commission rule, which mandated that all listings offer compensation to buyer's agent and when listing property on a multiple listing service on the MLS. And I'm just going to say, we're just to sneak something in there that the seller has to pay a commission. I mean, they have to, but it's not a set commission. Let's make a point of that. All right.
Yes.
Because this is where the media is really jacking things up. All right. The plaintiff argued that this practice resulted in home sellers shouldering the cost for buyers' agents, which they felt should only be covered by the buyer in a competitive market. This also led to allegations that home values were artificially inflated to cover the real estate commissions, effectively violating federal antitrust laws. I could say a lot about that.
Yeah. All right. So my thought is okay. So when a listing agent lists their home, the seller's home on the market, there's a co-op, or what the buyer's agent would make, right? And I think the main issue was sometimes listing agents, because they negotiated with the seller, would only maybe list 2% or 1%. And the buyer's agents, this is where a lot of the issues would be, is they would look at that commission and say, nope, I'm not going to show that listing to my buyers because I'm only going to be making 2%. In a sense, that's kind of steering, right? Us as agents, I always show all the houses that my buyers want to look at. I never look at the commission part because at the end of the day, it's what the buyers want and not what I'm going to be getting out of it, right?
Yeah. Here's how I would say this. There are definitely times where I see a 1% commission and I'm going to be like, wah, wah,
yes,
wah.
But you still show the house.
If my buyer wants to see that house, guess what I'm doing? I'm showing the property. A lot of times, though, you find that there are reasons why there's that 1% listing, and sometimes that seller is not reasonable, and maybe they've even got it still overpriced. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. So that is the true reason, in my opinion, why that doesn't get sold. It's not because an agent decides I'm not going to show that property. Even though I do believe that commission is what it is a incentive to help sell the property. The better commission helps sell the property. So this is a confusing aspect of commission.
Right. Well, and to say that the commissions inflated the market is completely false because commissions have been going on for decades, right?
Yeah.
And during COVID is when we saw a boom in the real estate market because people were reassessing their living situations. They didn't want to live in high states that have high income taxes or high state taxes, high property taxes. They were reevaluating their living. So they moved to places, and sellers were making bank because of the huge demand. It's a typical supply and demand, which inflated these prices, not because of paying commissions to the agents.
Yeah, and I would actually argue that in that scenario, commissions actually went down.
Yes,
because the sellers realized their power. They realized I can put a 1% commission or 1.5% or 2% commission out there, and because the market's so hot, I'm getting multiple offers anyway.
Right.
That's not going to change. That's not going to hurt my chances of getting the property sold.
And prime example, builders do this. When it was a hot market, they slashed the commissions for buyers agents. Yeah. Some of them weren't even offering commissions. And then when it was slow last year, guess what? They were offering 3-4% commissions.
And they still do.
On
standing inventory. If they want to move, by the end of the month.
The point of the commission is to incentivize the buyer's agents to push.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where it gets a little like, I don't understand how this wasn't properly argued for on NAR's part, but I also know that it's deeper than that. There was a lot of levels to this in which they felt that this was just the easiest way to protect all realtors by making this settlement. There's a lot that needs to actually still kind of shake out about this. We're going to obviously talk this through in our understandings, but ultimately, I just don't feel like that I don't see any evidence that this hurt sellers, and I don't see any evidence that this hurt buyers.
Yeah.
Sure, there are costs that go into things like when you have higher commission, but throughout my real estate career, 15 years in this business, I've seen commissions go down, not up. Okay.
Right. Well,
as prices have gone up.
Yes.
Okay, right. Sorry if I.
No, that's okay.
So as prices have gone up, I started out when it was a shambles. It was
started during the short sale times and the bankruptcy and REOs, and
I could sell a $60,000 or $100,000 home at that time. And oh, by the way, I still have to fight with the bank or over my commission at that time. But it would be typically once we started getting normal and selling traditional sales, 3% was the huge. And then it became 2.5 as time went on and prices got more. Right. Became more of the huge.
Yeah, it was never, the media makes it sound like it was always 6% and agents make 6% and they're making bank. But the problem is they don't realize is that it's never been 6%. It's never been set in 6%. And that's negotiated between the listing agent and the seller.
Absolutely.
And it's up to the seller to negotiate. I mean, if the agent's going to say 6%, it's up to the seller to say, hey, you know what? Can you do better than that? Yeah. Then that's where the negotiation takes place. We just start as a baseline.
Absolutely.
Right.
And just because there's a buyer agent getting 3% doesn't mean the seller's agent got 3% and it adds up to 6%. I would say often I see that the seller's agent gave a little deal on their side. And also sometimes if you're selling and buying, you can get a 1%. This is where they hide things, by the way, folks. You'll see these companies out there that'll say 1% listing. That sounds great, but there's some detail behind that because it usually means you need to buy a higher property that actually pays them 3%. If they don't get their 3%, then you actually have to make up that difference.
Yeah. How I do it, especially clients that buy and sell with me, I definitely give them a steep discount on the listing aspect, but I make sure that I do pay the buyer's agent well, because they're going to be to incentivize them to show the house and bring the buyers.
It's so weird to me because even as a listing agent, I want to save my client money. That I want to do them the best job I can.
Right.
If I thought that we had a scenario where we could just pay the buyer's agent less, then I would tell them what we should do that.
Right.
And it's not just because I think, we're in a club,
right,
and we should pay all the realtors. I think it's just a matter of, I know that this is going to be grease to the wheel and we're going to get this done more easily. And maybe even get more competent agents involved, the more that you have a better.
Yeah. I mean, situation. I'd rather take the cut on my end to ensure that the buyers are paid well, because I'm a buyer's agent as well. And, People have a misconception that realtors don't do anything. We're going to get further into that, but let's continue on with this lawsuit.
Yeah, we're getting too much probably into what matters to us and not what matters to you.
Right.
Which is
so the seller's issue with the structure, okay? Some sellers felt that they were charged too much considering the service that was provided. Some sellers also felt that it was unfair to ask them to pay for the buyer's agent. Additionally, even though commissions have always been negotiable, sellers may have felt that they couldn't offer a lower commission without impacting the agent's incentive to promote their listing. For example, if they offered 5% instead of the common 6%, agents may not work as hard or invest as much time in finding the buyer.
Yeah, well, okay. What do you think is going to happen now? Well, I'm just going to tell you that I think we have a worse situation on our hands.
Yes.
And the idea that the seller is just going to pay their listing agent right now. I just want to pay my listing agent, and I want that buyer's agent to get paid by the buyer. Okay, good luck. Good luck. Really.
But social media is making it sound, or the media is making it sound like the sellers no longer have to pay the buyer's agent. And that's not the case. And that's not what this ruling is saying.
You could do a 0% commission, by the way.
Yeah.
You could have done that.
But we're going to go over exactly how the ruling is spelled out, right? But I want you to read what the buyer's issue was for the structure.
Yeah. Some buyers had an issue with the idea that the cost of their agent might essentially be rolled into the price of the purchase. They wondered if the price would have been lower if the seller didn't have to spend so much on real estate agent commissions. Additionally, some buyers wondered if their agent had acted in their best interest. Did their agent only show them more expensive homes in order to get a higher commission? I do hear this all the time. We've heard this
it's not per se more expensive homes, but I think it's more so where more commission is in lieu of the lower commission.
Yeah. Okay. It's possible. And this is where maybe they had a case with some of these brokerages out there.
Right.
Because I know that not every brokerage is covered in this or has opted in or whatnot. There's a number of different things that have to do with that. There is a possibility, which we don't know yet, that they had a good case involving whatever area that there was some fixing going on. There was some provable stuff.
Right.
I would say in general, this is not a provable thing. This is somebody that maybe holds this in their head that I want to sell this 3% listing instead of this 2% listing. But I generally believe that it might, if we're just talking about the people in the room, for sure,
right,
we care about getting the job done well for our clients and not necessarily having to worry about what we're getting paid.
Right.
That's first and foremost. So I think most agents are actually that way. And I'm just going to say that essentially rolling it into the price of the purchase.
That's not true.
Guess what's going to happen now? Nothing. Nothing's going to happen. The sellers are just going to say, my house is still worth this much, and I'm going to sell it for that much. And no, I'm not going to take it down by the 10,000, 15, 20,000 or whatever the commission would have been on the other side. They're not going to suddenly say, I'm not going to.
Because I'm not paying this commission, I'm going to lower the price for you.
No, that's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen.
Right.
So what's really they're going to try to see, I would imagine there will be sellers that will try this. They're hearing this, that you can do this. They're going to try to just pay their listing agent and not pay for the buyer's agent. I think that's going to be a tough sell, folks.
Well, what's going to happen, and my 2 cents is that, I had predicted last month that Vegas market's going to be very good and robust. Maybe it will be till this quarter, right? Second quarter. But after this, if this continues, it's supposed to take into effect some of the things we're going to talk about in July. Mm-hmm. But if this continues, then what's going to happen to the market, folks? Sellers? If you're not going to have the buyers that can afford to their agents, if they're going to have to pay and you're not going to offer commission to the broker's agent, you're not going to have buyers to buy your home. Yeah.
So what's that? Accessing that lockbox?
Right.
And now, are you talking about an agent that's getting paid, $1,000 or whatever the agreement, whatever that poor buyer can afford? Not poor as in actually poor, but that poor buyer who now has to take on this to get an agent to show them around. You're getting subpar service, and you're speaking of incentivizing awful service,
Right.
that's what's going to happen.
Well, and another thing too, if the buyers come to the listing agent to represent them on both sides,
this is terrible.
this is called dual agency. And basically the listing agent has a fiduciary duty to the seller, right?
Yep.
They don't have any fiduciary duty to the buyer. So when it comes to home inspections and disclosures and contingencies, that listing agent has no duty to that buyer.
Well, they do, and so they actually do. As a dual agent, you have all the same duties.
Yes, but the main duty is to the seller, because
that's the problem, though. There is no main duty,
right?
Like, you actually are supposed to straddle both sides of that fence. But again, speaking of incentivizing and things that aren't written and causing more problems, what's going to be more of a conflict of interest here? It's going to be more dual agency, without a doubt.
Right.
A dual agency is something that only experienced agents should take on for the most part. And some brokerages don't even let you do it. Even
some brokerages and states don't allow dual agency.
And there's a big reason. It's conflict of interest.
Exactly.
And so
you want your agent to represent you to the best, not have them also represent the buyer.
And how do you do that if you're in both situations, if you're representing both sides? This gets tough. It can be done. And in certain situations, I've certainly done that. As a listing agent myself, I'd love to be able to make both sides of the commission and represent both sides healthily, like with making sure that everybody's clean, that I don't have to worry about something coming back bite me later. That's important. Now, think about this though. That listing agent, you made an agreement to pay them 2.5%, 3%, whatever. Now you don't have to pay the buyer's agent, but that listing agent gets somebody to come to them. And what do they just automatically take on the liability of representing another side for nothing? No, that's not going to happen. So now you're still, as a seller, you're still looking at your agent. I'm going to tell my seller, if you're doing this, if I get somebody that comes to me, we now have to talk about what I'm getting paid to represent them. Right. Unless you got listing agents without any scruples, they should be getting paid for their liability that's now involved and upticked by having an extra person they're representing. Exactly.
So how it was settled. So NAR is proposing to pay $418 million settlement and change some of their positions. So basically, people say that by NAR agreeing to settle, that they're admitting to wrongdoing. They're agreeing to settle because they want to stop all these copycat lawsuits from
cascading effect.
Exactly. Nip it in the bud. It's going to cover over $1 million or $1 billion. How many agents it's going to cover?
Yeah, I don't recall how many agents there are, but all of them.
So basically, what happened out of this lawsuit and what NAR is trying to submit to the courts is what their actions are going to take, right? Mm-hmm. So now going forward, starting in July of 2024, the agent's compensation cannot be published on the MLS. Prior to the settlement, the listing agent would include the buyer's compensation in a designated MLS field. This information can no longer be listed in the MLS. The idea behind this rule change is to allow buyers to negotiate the buyer's agent fee directly with the agent. However, listing brokers and sellers could continue to offer compensation for the buyer's broker service. But again, such offers could not be communicated via the MLS. Compensation would continue to be negotiable if they negotiated between paying the agents or the closing costs for the buyer.
Yeah, so you can still, as a seller, you can still put concessions out there for a buyer,
right?
But you just can't. And I thought, this would just, for a second, I thought when I hadn't read everything in detail, okay, well, they just won't show the commission on, and then I could just put it in the notes. Hey, seller is paying a commission.
Right?
No, you can't do that.
Can't
be anywhere on the MLS. So this will be interesting because. What do you think is really going to happen? I mean, are agents just going to go, okay, first of all, they're going to have that buyer's agreement.
Right.
So now you as a buyer, when you're walking in the door of a property, you're going to know.
So that's going to be the next thing.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So we'll get to that.
No, you can explain it.
But this cascades into this. sort of forks down a couple of different
Right.
ways, right? So now listen, I'm going to just put a positive spin on this really quickly.
Okay.
Transparency. This is good. Okay. Transparency is good for you as the consumer out there. So if you're watching this and wondering how this helps you, I think this helps you in the way that you're going to have, it will be
better
more
knowledge.
You're going to have more knowledge of what everybody's getting paid in these transactions. And especially because we're going to talk about the next part, when you walk in the door of a property and you have a buyer's agent representing you. So we'll go into that, I guess.
You can go.
Segue into that. Buyer must have a written agreement with agents before touring properties.
So caveat, there's no more where you're interviewing agents. Once you pick an agent and you want them to show houses, guess what? You're signing a buyer brokerage agreement with that agent.
This is not advantageous in my mind at all to a consumer, but I'm wondering if there's going to be some ways we deal with that. So we'll talk about that. While NAR, National Association of Realtors, has been advocating for the use of written agreements for years, and they have expressed they want us to try to get these things because they are just better legally. They are better for, not real, it's transparency. It's all there.
Right.
And agreed. They in this settlement, NAR has agreed to require MLS participants working with buyers to enter in written representation agreements with their buyers before touring a home. These agreements can help consumers understand exactly what services and value they'll be provided and for how much.
Yeah. So the point is transparency, right?
Yeah, it's transparent, but here's the problem. And it's either we're going to be writing these up every time we walk into a new home,
right,
and have a new one for every new home, which means basically what it always meant, which is if I show you it's procurement, first, what is it? Procuring costs.
Well, I don't think it's for every new home. It's just for every buyer you work with.
But here's the thing. If that buyer is now signing with you,
right,
just because you showed them one home, which is what you were alluding to,
right,
that means they don't have a choice after they only can choose you.
You're locking them into the agreement. We're working with you only.
Yeah,
basically, is what it's saying.
I think I like Rob. I will hire him. I will have him. You're basically deciding as soon as I open a lockbox for you that I'm hired. And unless I guess we cancel that agreement,
right?
Which is a pain in the butt. So the only other thing I can think of is that you ultimately are saying you're signing this for this property right here. And only this property, which is procuring costs anyways. It's just now written in stone that, hey, I'm getting paid this much if I sell you this property, and I'm representing you on that.
Right. Well, too, is that every time you show them a home, you can have them sign the MLS sheet, because I always print the customer copy and I print one, have them sign and date it, and then keep a file folder for them.
That's not a bad idea.
To keep track of all the homes they show. As a buyer's agent, I have never believed in having my client sign a buyer brokerage agreement, because I sell a lot to out-of-state clients that sometimes are just looking, they're not ready yet, they're a couple years out. So I never believed in having someone commit to me because things happen and maybe they don't like my personality and they want to use someone else.
Absolutely.
So I never ever did this. But going forward as a buyer, you're going to have to expect to sign this with your agent.
Yeah.
And don't get offended by it.
Yeah, this is troubling to me, and I just want to express this to somebody who's out there. This is how we feel about it, and why we feel we do a good job for people is because we do understand that there is a personality thing involved in our business. There's, how you get along, how you communicate with somebody, and sometimes it doesn't work out.
Right.
You're not right for that person, or they're not right for you, whatever. That is, to me, that goes along with the human side of our business, and being able to choose the right agent to really help you do the job. So this is kind of funky to that for sure, and kind of steers away from that. I also think that some of this is potentially steering away from the community-based realtor, which is definitely what Ange and I are. I mean, this is where our value lies. If you want to know why you would be signing a buyer agreement with Ange or myself, it's because of our community knowledge. It's because of our knowledge throughout this process that you're about to go through, which is daunting for some people, and so on and so forth. Now, do you know that right away by seeing that online right here? We can tell you that, but I ask somebody to just choose me and I take them to one property and I'm theirs forever.
Right.
or at least for as long as that buyer's agreement is in
place.
In
right?
place.
Right. Yeah. Let's see if there's any comments before we go on.
Yeah.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
Nobody's commenting.
No one's commenting. All right. So these rules are expected to be implemented by July 2024, like I mentioned. And so we're going to go over why agents are concerned for buyers. And then we're also going to go over why agents are concerned for sellers. And basically, home buyers are already facing historically high upfront costs when buying a home, especially higher interest rates. Buyers already have substantial down payments and closing costs to pay. Adding real estate agent fees to the burden could push some buyers out of the housing market entirely.
Yeah.
This is especially true to already vulnerable buyers like first-time home buyers and VA buyers. VA buyers, for those who don't know, are active military members or veterans or surviving spouses using the Department of Veteran Affairs VA loan, right? And the VA expressly forbids VA buyers from paying certain fees when buying a home. And this includes real estate agent fees. So VA buyers are literally prohibited from buying their own representation.
Yeah. So there's so many holes in this. There's so much troubling nature to this. I just hope that it can land on its feet and be good for the consumer. Again, my consistent concern is that it may not be, and that the powers that are behind this, by the way, I don't want to get too deep into that weeds, but there is a reason why these things went to court. And it's not just because a whole bunch of home sellers really felt all that ripped off. I think that this was a group that was gathered with some money behind it and some people who want to come into this business and change it. There's a lot of money involved in commissions. And ultimately, when you read things like VA buyers are literally prohibited from paying for their own representation, well, obviously that would have to change in order for this to work just for a VA buyer, which is awful that would be the case.
Well, the interest rate's going to have to come down.
Rates are going to have to come down. And guess what? They can never go back up. You can never be in this position where people are paying this much money for homes.
Well, and here's my problem. Actually, let's do why agents are concerned for sellers, and then I'll talk about my problem.
Okay. All right. Why agents are concerned for sellers. The media is leading sellers to believe that they no longer have to pay for a buyer's agent, so they will save a large amount of money going forward. But this is likely not true, very likely not true. Mm-hmm. As we just established, buyers who have to pay their own agent out of pocket may not be able to afford to buy at all. That's definitely going to be a case. That would remove a portion of would-be buyers from the market, minimizing the pool of potential buyers for today's sellers. Definitely. And as has always been the case, motivated sellers will offer something of value to incentivize buyers to choose their listing. I think that's going to be the case. As we will see, one of the most valuable things sellers can do for buyers is to cover the cost of the buyer's agent. So while sellers are being told their real estate fees will go from around 6% to around 3%, the likely reality is that they will pay around 3% to their own agent and give around 3% to the buyer's agent so they can pay for their agent. Absolutely. The media is creating unrealistic expectations for sellers that will likely result in disappointment and frustration.
Yes. So the key takeaway is that the media is stating that the sellers no longer have to pay the buyer's agent when that was not the case. The main case was there's two things that came out of this case. One, the compensation can no longer be communicated on the MLS. And two, buyers have to go into a buyer brokerage agreement before even looking at the house. Yeah. That's all that was agreed upon. Nowhere does it state that sellers no longer have to pay the buyer's agents. It just states that it cannot be disclosed on the MLS.
Yeah. Which if you're like me and you're watching these headlines go by you and you realize it's the same exact message. Have you seen that news thing before where the news gets the same? They're saying that you watch the reel of every news station saying the same thing. That's what I feel like I'm in right now, because they're all saying this statement. The standard 6% commission is gone, and it will save sellers and buyers money.
Right.
That's the statement, that 6%, the standard 6%.
which was never 6%. It's just a baseline that we start out and then we negotiate.
It's not even you can't even say it's a baseline. Yeah, I guess it's just maybe a comfortable area for some people. Certainly, if you're selling like a $200,000 house or something, that might be a 3% isn't going to crush that seller. As it gets more and more expensive, you'll find that it's less and less that they're doing a 6%. Anyhow, it's not a standard. And oh, by the way, where did anybody get the idea that this is actually going to save anybody money?
Right.
Other than you're trying to say that I'm just not going to pay.
Well, what's going to happen is if the sellers refuse to pay, you're going to get less showings and you're going to have a lower buyer pool. And so what's going to happen is your prices are going to go down and you're going to still lose money.
Well, yeah, I don't really understand it. Here's the thing. Do you want people in good standing going into your home? Because this is how we do it. We do it with a lockbox. That lockbox is electronic. Agents in good standing can enter into that home. So whether you have a vacant home or you're leaving to, allow a showing, this is how we do it. And you want real qualified people coming into your home to buy that home. That's what we as agents will help do and make sure and support. Now, if you're deciding, I don't want to pay a buyer's agent, so that means to me that you're just going to have your listing agent do open houses. And you're going to just like open house the house all the time. And now you're going to have strangers flowing through it like crazy. Now, doing an open house here and there, fine. But doing that as your main source of getting anybody to walk through the door, I think that's a little crazy. And you're also going to be dealing with people who do not belong there. They don't have any intention of buying your home. They don't even have the ability to do so. And you're not vetting anybody. So what are you really getting out there for us?
Well, people have this misconception that real estate agents make a shite ton of money. I mean, some do, and some really good top agents that are very good agents make good money because they put the work into it. But what people don't realize is that we do not get paid until a house closes. Yeah. We don't make any commission. I mean, we don't make any, hourly sales or anything like that.
Yeah.
We will not get paid until a home closes. So we have tons of other expenses that goes on throughout the course of the transaction, not just through the listing, but through the buying that we incur, the cost of gas, etc. An average real estate agent makes $30,000 to $40,000 a year. That's it. Yeah. So not everybody's making bank in real estate, only the top ones, right?
Yeah.
But what's going to happen is the agents that are going to start doing flat fees for the buyers, you're not going to have very good representation because they're just the bottom feeders, right?
Yeah. That's absolutely true. I think it's going to be desperate people. Desperate people cause desperate measures, and those desperate measures in this transaction are not good. You want, first of all, you never want to feel like you're paying your agents, car payment,
right?
Because they're sweating it. You know what I mean? Like, no, that's not a good idea. You want to have agents that are capable, and we aren't getting paid throughout the transaction. So there's many times that you do a lot of work and you're not getting paid.
You don't get paid. Sometimes the deal goes through in hours and days and whatever on this one transaction, and bam.
But this also, to me, also supports somebody that's the consumer. How does that help you knowing that I'm not getting paid? Okay, until I complete a job for you,
right?
That helps you because it has to be done and done right in order for you in order for me to get paid. Okay, to me that's a very good incentive all on its own. Okay, so and these numbers didn't just come out of thin air. How people get paid, right. I just think that it's almost not even worth addressing because the people that don't have an understanding for this have never been my clients. They have an understanding for this. Everybody that I've ever worked for understood the transaction really well.
Well, the problem is that, in the early 1990s is when paying commission to the buyer's agent took into place, right? because there was a lot of issues and lawsuits at that time. That's why they incorporated this aspect of sellers paying. And this has been going on since the 90s. And like Rob said, I think the only reason why we're seeing this now is that this company or corporation saw something.
A number of them. Look, the tech real estate corporations, tech real estate companies are seeing they're seeing an opportunity. And they're trying to get in and sort of break down somebody else is trying to make this money. It's not disappearing. It's not actually going to be helpful for you as the consumer. That's the way I look at it. And that's the unfortunate part of this, is that it's being packaged as if it's going to be good. But if this means the dying days of the community-based agent, that to me means terrible things for the consumer. I really do believe that's not good. Now, the transparency is good. The transparency I always say is good. I don't like to be involved in something where everybody doesn't understand what's happening. Certainly the things that they need to understand what's happening.
Right. Yeah. So this is another thing we're going to go over. What real estate fees actually cover, right? Mm-hmm. So for one thing, listing agents cover marketing costs upfront. Much of their eventual commission is used to reimburse themselves for the costs incurred for things like professional listing photos, videos, and property advertisement. If the house doesn't sell, the agent might not recoup the costs also for staging or videos with the Matterport. Any expenses we accrue up front. We don't ask our sellers to pay for those expenses, right?
That's right.
So actually, and there's an unforeseen labor that agents go through, and I'm not going to go over this list. I have created a blog post. I'll post a link down in the description below. But as agents, we don't just sit around. I work 24/7. Rarely get vacations. The moment I get up to the moment I go to bed, I'm on call, just like a doctor. If a client has a question, I answer them right away. That's what good agents do.
Yep.
I don't just sit on my butt.
Yeah, it's hard for me to even have to defend why I should be able to make a living. Because I've dedicated myself in so many ways, and it's not time off that I get. It's not days off that I get. It's time off. When I get the time off, I get it. But virtually every other day, including when I'm on vacation, most of my vacations, unless I'm in Thailand, which was one time in my entire career so far, and one time in Mexico. I was in Mexico, two vacations where I actually felt like, okay, I could designate certain times where I can get back to people, and that was going to be it. But literally, this is the job. A lot of people go to work, they get their 9 to 5, and then they get a paycheck. Right. That's not our guarantee here. This is where you have to have such a mindset for this business. Right. And finding somebody that is right for you is so important. That's why the community-based thing, the mindset, somebody who has a very strong mindset and isn't going to let even what's happening in our business right now get us down. Because I think that we know that we're gonna reinvent. We have to literally reinvent whatever we're gonna do here now.
We have to reinvent ourselves
constantly. And what Anne's just done, and I've said this from this very beginning when I met you, I knew that you had done something really special. That what she's done. Speaking of being community based, she has shown people and did this at a time where you could get this out on YouTube and things. That aren't here, that need to see what's happening, right? And even maybe somebody who's in Henderson needs to find out what's happening in Summerlin, right? They want to know these things, and this is all done on your dime, right? So that you can make a dime, right?
All the hours I put into my website, my education videos, and neighborhood tours, and I don't get paid for any of this, but it pays off. It pays off in the end.
It pays off, and so you're gonna de-incentivize that absolute fantastic service for people out there. I just think that's ridiculous,
right?
And I just think, well, what we are looking at, what is trying to take the place of it, I think will be less value to the consumer, and that's my concern. I hope I'm wrong. And I want to stay, folks, I want to stay positive. I just told you about a positive mindset But it is this is a tough one to swallow because of the fact that I think it hurts people.
Well, and I do some listings, but I'm more of a buyer's agent.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to affect me a lot. But if you want an experienced, knowledgeable, fair, honest, trustworthy person, then, I just hope all the work that I've done will shine through.
It does. It absolutely does. And so that's what we will continue to offer ourselves beyond, I
just feel bad for the VA buyers.
I mean,
and I work with awful. A lot of military members, and it's going to be tough if a seller's not going to pay my commission. I'm sorry. I have to get paid. I don't work for free.
Right. And how is that going to work? The poor VA buyer gets this zero down deal.
Yeah.
But you got to pay your agent. So that kind of goes.
And then, a lot of agents, brokerages, sometimes, the agents, okay, so they split. Here's the fee structure, right? The agents split the commission. Let's say 6 for all intents and purposes. Doesn't mean that's the true commission, right?
Right.
Then the 6% gets split between the listing agent and the buyer's agent, or I say the listing broker and the buyer's broker, right? Some brokerages require another additional split, which would be some brokerages are 70-30, 60-40, depending on what brokerage you are. So not in all cases where those agents, the listing agent and the buyer agent, will get that full 3% commission.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that, my brokerage charges a buyer transaction fee, right? Or a transaction fee of, say, $500. I never charge my clients that fee. I eat it in my commission, right? I don't ever believe in charging my buyers that. That's why I always say I'm free.
It's cost of doing business, cost of being with your brokerage. Right. And by the way, that's how the brokerage makes money. So this will be interesting to see how they make money in the future.
I think the lawsuits that happened in those big brokerages that take a percentage of until they cap, say like they have to make 20,000, and once they hit 20,000 in commission, then they can get 100% commission. So these big brokerages are making 30% off of each agent's commission until they cap.
Yeah.
That should be a lawsuit, in my opinion.
It may be, because I think that who you're talking about is still going to be involved in this.
Well, I'm going to be transparent. There's nothing to hide. There, KW, prime example, does the cap split. Even all of these online brokerages like Real Broker, I don't even know them anymore. There's Real Broker, and then there's another one, EXP Realty. You still have to pay a percentage of your commission to these online brokerages.
I don't know if EXP does that.
Yes.
Do they?
Yep. They have a cap that you have to make too.
Okay.
But anyway, so at the end of the day, this is what it's going to mean to you as a buyer, and Rob's going to go what it means to a seller. So NAR settlement does not mean that you necessarily have to pay for your agent out of pocket. We expect many sellers will be willing to offer a concession to cover the cost of your real estate agent, as they understand that you already have the financial burden of the down payment and closing costs. As has always been the case, you are free to negotiate directly with your buyer's agent before beginning your working relationship. Some agents may be willing to work for the flat rate fee or an hourly rate. However, if you end up viewing more properties than you're expected to, you could end up spending just as much or more than if you agreed to a commission. You might also miss out on valuable services that you didn't realize you needed. You will need to have signed an agreement in place for the buyer's agent before you even look at the house.
Woo, this opens up so much stuff that I have problems with. I'm just going to say, like, right off the bat, if I'm a listing agent and I know that this buyer's agent is getting paid hourly or something weird like that, it concerns me for their level of service to that buyer and how well they're going to be able to hold up that side of the deal.
Well, then how do you track the hours?
It's very difficult. So you're doing like basically piece work.
Yes.
It sounds like, and that did occur to me that, okay, buyer's brokerage agreement, I'm showing you property. I'm going to get $100 for showing you this property. And then I'll show you the next one. We'll sign a new one. You get $100,
right.
We'll just keep doing that.
Well, I mean, I think you're misreading it. You don't have to sign a brokerage agreement for each property you
No, but I know, I understand that, but I'm saying, how do you break this down to where it even makes sense at all for the buyer? Like, you got to,
and how do they pay
size,
you? Yeah.
Do
they pay you up front and, a retain? Looks like some people were saying like lawyers get a retainer.
Yeah, and then ultimately, when it really counts, when it comes to the contract, what are you paying for the contract? What are you
Right.
paying for the are you want the agent to show up to the
Home
home
inspection.
inspection, the appraisal? Do you want them to
Walk through.
walk through? Are each of these piecemeal now? I
Yes.
mean, like,
I saw someone put together like how much they would charge if they had the piecemeal.
Yeah.
And as that says, it could add up to just paying either a flat rate or just paying the commission, because we're not free,
Yeah.
And that could be help agents that are working with clients and they get their upfront fees ahead of time and not worry for the deal to close.
So this, and just to jump ahead into something, this is where I do think that the real estate tech companies want this to go, because they are the ones that want to be able to have employees that they play and then get a flat rate, and they're basically taking over the duties of the MLS.
Right.
This is where service is going to go out the freaking window. Now, a lot of great things happen online. I'm not saying they don't do a good job there. They have, otherwise they wouldn't exist.
Right.
I mean, matter of fact, I think they came in and did something that wasn't being done by the multiple listing service. That's why Zillow exists. They did the Zestimate. They did a lot of great things.
Yeah, but then they get that feed from the MLS.
But yeah, exactly. And the thing that they haven't been able to conquer is that human community-based service. They have not been able to break through that wall. And that's where I think that's the final, like, real thing that's happening here.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, Redfin does have a Redfin agents, right? But what Rob is saying with community-based services is Vegas is huge, right? And some areas may be smaller than others, right? But in Vegas, there are so many different master plan communities and so many different parts of it that you need an agent that knows about these areas, or also has a niche or an expertise in these areas, right? Like Summerlin, Sky Canyon, Henderson communities. Henderson has their own master plan communities. Because if you pick a general agent, how are they going to be able to help you with what type of amenities are there in that neighborhood? What's around in that neighborhood? You're going to be paying more. I can't explain what I'm saying, but to have a knowledgeable agent on your side is better than paying for the online agents that just show you and don't know anything about the area.
Yeah, there's a reason why they're working for that situation,
right?
Because if they were able to do it on their own and they had more knowledge, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't work for a company that's just giving them whatever employee rate that they're getting. I'm not sure what that structure is, but it doesn't make sense to me. Anyhow.
So then Rob's going to go over what the NAR settlement means for sellers.
Yeah. In 2024, sellers should expect to pay around the same rate for real estate representation as prior years. Absolutely. As has always been the case, real estate commissions are negotiable. However, an agent who knows their value is unlikely to come down on the standard rate they have set for themselves. You may want to take extra caution hiring a real estate agent who cannot successfully negotiate their own commission. Absolutely. Knowing that your agent will be representing you in negotiations with buyers. Most sellers prefer to hire strong negotiators. Absolutely, they do. You might find that instead of paying around 6% or whatever percent was negotiated, your listing agent who shares that with the buyer's agent, you end up paying around 3% for your listing agent, plus around 3% in concessions to the buyer, so they can pay their agent. I'm not sure that that the scale kind of just stays where things are going in the same place, because I just don't see that buyers, especially in this environment, are coming in and being able to.
Well, especially with the high interest rates, what's going to happen, in my opinion, is the doomers are actually going to finally be right. But it's not because of the market; it's because of policy.
Yeah, it's definitely it's another link. It's another chain in the link that could get a little weak there.
Right.
You have the right to say you will only pay your agent and will not cover the cost of the buyer's agent, but you would likely see your pool of qualified buyers shrink substantially, because many buyers simply aren't going to be able to add more costs to their already high upfront investment of buying a home. Without a doubt, that's going to be what happens. And oh, by the way, folks, this has always been your right. You could have just said, I'm only paying my agent and I'm doing a 0%. That's you just have to. It wasn't that you had to pay a commission. It was that you had to stipulate the commission.
Well, what's going to happen is we have this lawsuit because of steering, right? Because supposedly, right? What do you think is going to happen if a buyer's agent doesn't get paid? they're going to steer their buyer away from sellers that don't pay.
It doesn't make any sense.
So the steering is still going to happen, right? In my opinion.
Well, they're going to steer them right into an agreement that says, you have to pay me. Like, that's what, you know. Yeah.
Oh, good. We got some comments. All right. So Patricia, glad to see you both. Thanks for info because I like to know how these changes will affect me.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
And then you want to read.
Buying power goes down if they have to pay their own commission. Less money for down payment and other fees, 1,000%. That's just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
One of the things that buyers not having to, that sellers paying the buyer's commission has done that sellers have actually made more on their properties because they have more buyers available to afford their properties.
Exactly. Because yes, everything's negotiable, but if the buyers are going to have to pay their agents, as we've been saying throughout this video, the buyer pool goes down, means less houses are going to get sold, means less money that the buyers are going to be making because there's no incentives for the buyer's agent if they're not going to get paid.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, and I'm going to add this too, folks. You don't get things you don't look for the deal on big permanent things. Okay. This is a kind of a weird thing, but like, for example, if I was going to get a tattoo, I don't want, that's permanent. I'm not going to look for the person who's the cheapest.
Right. You want a tattoo artist that has a good reputation and you're going to pay some good money.
You're paying for that reputation.
Yes.
So this goes to the next thing that we're going to, you can read that one.
Yeah.
But I just want to preface this with that you're paying for experience, I think now. So yeah, okay, you can get that new agent and maybe that new agent will accept X amount of dollars. That may be the situation we're dealing with.
Right.
But you want the experience. If you want experience on your side, you want to get that tattoo artist that knows what they're doing. You want to get that real estate agent that knows what they're doing and is going to protect you and make sure you get the property that you're not going to have problems with. Then you're going to want to pay them accordingly.
And one way to research an agent is always read the reviews. There's Zillow, Google, whatever reviews they have, because that shows how strong of an agent they are. But Just Julie said, thinking of buying in Las Vegas next year, what would be the fee as a buyer if the home I buy? Well, I don't know.
It'd be, let's just say it's 10 grand.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know what next year is going to happen. Unfortunately, there's no set commission depending on which agent you select.
Yeah, I'm going to say 10,000. I'm going to say 10,000. That's 2.5%. So,
yeah.
Is that 2.5%?
No, that's less than 2.5%.
I'm sorry, it's 15, I think.
Yeah. Is there a cost to interview you to see personalities match? No.
So that's actually, these are great questions, actually. The cost to see if the personalities match. I would say that's actually how we might actually deal with that side of things.
Right.
It's like, let's have a meeting. Let's get in person before I even open a home for you. So it just kind of puts one more thing that you have to do in front of everybody. And if you like what you have to hear, what your agent has to say, great. The hard part for buyers is going to be they're hot to trot. They want to get out there and look at properties. They don't want to talk to me like that. They want to talk to me when I'm in a home with them.
Yeah, but if the buyers we work with or the ones that I work with already know and like us because they follow us on YouTube. So they already know who we are. It's just we need to get to know who they are.
That's true too. Who's interviewing who?
Right. No. Exactly. You want to read the next one?
Are buyer's agents going to expect their clients to pay them 3% commission?
No. I don't think so.
Yeah,
that's all negotiable.
So it's almost a little bit of it's a good question. It's a bit of a trick question in a way, because I feel like the answer could be, I feel like I deserve to get paid well for my work, right? So yeah, I'd like to get 3%. Does that mean I'm actually gonna, if I know the buyer's paying for this directly out of their costs, that I'm gonna say you got to pay me 3%? Probably not.
Right.
Probably not. But this is where that incentive-based thing comes in on the seller side, and they have this incentive to pay more to buyers, to get buyers to agents to bring more buyers.
Right.
So this is a different way to instill the whole system, right? I guess, I mean, this is why it's so tough. This is why it's so tough. You're going to expect this buyer now to come in and you know, we go from now to July, and suddenly after July, you're paying, you know, 3% to your agent.
Yeah, I mean, all that's negotiable. And if you do negotiate a lower price, as one of the statement says, that means that you're working with an agent that doesn't know how to negotiate their value. So are they going to be good negotiating the contract in your offer?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to start seeing a lot of these, just like in the past, we saw a lot of the 1% listing agents, right? You're going to see a lot of these buyer agents that will accept $1,000 or whatever, but what service are you really getting for that money? Flat fee or flat rate agents.
Yep. But see, that's exactly what goes to what I think, you know, the real estate brokerages,
yes,
internet real estate brokerages are looking for.
Right.
Okay. There's people steering this truck. Okay. This plane, or whatever you want to call it.
Want to read the next one?
Yeah. On the agreement, is there a time limited from the buyer's agent? We'll say that's buyer's agent. Say it takes more than 6 months to find a home.
You know what, to be honest with you, maybe there is, but I've never had a buyer fill out one of those.
There is.
Okay.
There's a time that you're going to put on there for
and when it expires.
It's valid for so long. There'll be an expiration, and it'll be similar to a listing agreement where even though it expires, if that buyer is to go out and buy one of the properties that you showed them, that you would still be owed a commission potentially.
Right. Yeah. So basically it could be a 3-month contract, a 6-month contract, a 6-month contract. It depends on what you and that buyer's agent agree upon and what you're willing to accept. Yeah. Sometimes buyers take years to find a home. I work with buyers. I just closed on 2 listings that I've been working with them for 4 years.
Yep.
Because of my follow-up skills. And
what do we get paid for? She's talking about it right now.
4 or 5 years I followed up with these clients, and they weren't ready in the beginning, and I kept in communication with them, and I never had them sign one because, again, I never believed in a buyer brokerage agreement.
The buyer brokerage agreement is really important, has been important for my business, because when I would take a listing and I would say, okay, you want to get your listing negotiated, that commission on my side for the listing negotiated down. Well, I'll do that if you're going to buy, and then now I'll have you sign a buyer's brokerage agreement saying that I will be your buyer's agent.
Oh, that's smart.
Side. Yeah, because you know you're getting some value for the value you're giving. This kind of takes that away. And by the way, one of the biggest pieces that we're not talking about for a seller that may not be interested in paying a buyer's agent fee any longer is that seller's usually a buyer on the other side.
Oh, right.
So what are you doing there?
Yeah, we brought this up in our last market update. So not all sellers will buy, but a good chunk of them, like 90%, will end up buying something. So in the end, they're still going to have to pay the buyer's agent. Right.
Yep. You're gonna go. So you're either, and what are you gonna do? Turn to that listing agent that you obviously trusted so much to sell your asset, your largest asset usually, and say, no, I'm gonna actually go find another agent. No, you're gonna look at them and say, I'm gonna pay you. So you're paying somebody regardless.
Right.
In this situation.
But I am a firm believer in karma. I'm a firm believer in what goes around comes around, right? And I think that if sellers continue the way that they have been, then when they buy a home, it's going to be rewarded to them, and then they're not going to have to pay that buyer's agent, if that makes any sense of what I said.
Oh, yeah, it does make sense. It does make sense. I think that a lot of what we are used to is going to continue. It's the years down the road that I kind of wonder about. This is just about corroding some of the pillars that do what our business has done for many years. And we're going to have to see how that evolves and changes over time.
Well, buyers are going to start getting tricky. Buyers are going to start calling the listing agent to show the house. That listing agent may be busy. Again, the listing agent's main duty first is their seller. my opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that's interesting in this, and this is where I'm talking about like some of these online entities, these tech real estate entities, they're going to take it on the chin first, and they're willing to do this because what is Zillow's model to actually make money?
Well, they charge agents for leads.
They charge agents for leads. So when I have a listing, it goes on, it goes out there, it goes on eventually with Zillow.
Right.
Now Zillow gets that, and they make it easier for everybody to be on there and save stuff, and that's why it's great.
If a client or a person on Zillow likes a house,
likes my listing,
then it goes to a lead.
It doesn't go to me.
It doesn't go to
goes to
a
buyer's agent that has paid for those leads, and they have lots of those that's
how Zillow and all these companies make their money is because buyers agents who need leads that have teams pay for people clicking on those links.
Yeah. So that's going to get hampered a bit, or they're just, which I already know they don't show it's not easy to find that listing agent.
And they're supposed to show it right up front.
But yet they make it difficult to do that. And so because I know this, because when I entered into the business for the first several years of me being in the business, I used to get direct calls all the time on my listings.
Yeah.
And that was from the internet. It wasn't from necessarily, it would be signed calls as well, but it would be from that. And now I get very rarely do I get somebody who breaks through that wall and actually can contact a listing agent.
Yeah.
So they're willing to sort of have their business go by the wayside because eventually they want to have the full control of everything and be the listing agent as well. So Zunuf
says this settlement seems like it's only going to make it harder for buyers. Maybe buyers will go directly to listing agents, cutting out the buyer's agent. Yes. But you're not going to get a fair representation from the listing agent. And that's going to cause lawsuits because most states don't allow dual agency.
A lot of states don't allow it. A lot of brokerages don't want it.
Right.
I would say that many times you can be just perfectly safe doing that. Okay. Myself, I would have to say, if I'm going to take on a dual agency, I'm going to feel like I know I can do this for you. On the other hand, if I don't think I can do that, I won't do that. And I don't care about the money involved. I know what when I say liability, this is where you're talking liability. Okay. So if I was to, poo-poo that little mildew issue and then it turns out that you've got mildew or no, it's actually mold throughout your house after you close on it. Now, and it could be proven in any way or whatever, you're going to come after, the seller, myself, everybody. That's really quite a lot of problem. Now, as a listing agent, I'm going to protect my seller's interests, and that's all I have to worry about. As a buyer's agent, if typically you separate that, so you're only worrying about your buyer's agent or your buyer. And so that's why having this system that we've had has been advantageous. Everything's advantageous to the buyers. Do you realize? Has anybody raised your hand if you've seen a contract lately?
Oh my God, yeah.
They're huge.
They protect the buyer 4 different ways, and at least in the state of Nevada, or Las Vegas.
Massive protection for the buyer, not necessarily for the seller. The seller has to protect themselves, really, and have an agent that's looking out for them, of course. But the buyer is really, really well protected. So now you're going to enter into a situation where I just feel like that's a problem. So you're going to contact the listing agent? Yeah, okay.
Well, I've seen, I belong to several real estate groups on Facebook where buyers want to represent themselves. Kind of like, you have the FSBO for sell by owner for sellers selling their homes. Then you have buyers representing themselves. And you're not going to know what a contract looks like, what the contract means, what type of the contingencies are, everything.
Yeah. So I'm the listing agent and I got a buyer representing themselves. I got a problem.
Yeah.
I got a problem because that buyer is not going to know what they're doing. They're going to be sending me all kinds of stuff that doesn't make any sense. And basically I'm going to be running the show in order to keep my ass out of hot water.
Right.
That's how it's going to go. That's not good, folks. That's total chaos in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, if the buyer, and to prove my point in that would be a lot of the for sale by owners where there's been a lot of problems, or even just family sales and friend sales, and where suddenly they didn't do things right, so there's a problem in that transaction.
Right.
You know, I still say to people like, hey, you should pay, again, it's permanent. You should pay a little money for an agent to watch over this transaction, even if you're just selling to a friend. It's a good idea.
There's always an old adage that goes, you got to spend money to make money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
I'm a firm believer in it. You put the money out there and it's going to come back tenfold.
Yeah.
You know, to say that paying commissions increase the value of the market these last 5 years is completely wrong. What increased the prices was not paying realtors commissions, was because of lack of inventory and low interest rates and the buyer demand. COVID is the culprit of all of this.
Yeah. And here's another thought. I can just keep going on. I mean, I don't know. I hope it's not boring people when I say this, but listing agent now has a new thing that they want to do to be able to make money. And they know that they can sort of get the buyer to come to them. Okay. And now they'll go to their seller and say, hey, you got to pay me to represent the buyer. Now that to me creates a conflict of interest where agents are sort of fishing for that to happen.
Money,
you know, and then not really even looking out for their seller or the buyer.
Right.
They're just looking out for themselves. This sounds terrible to me. So, you know, ultimately, is that listing agent going to take in a buyer and just not get paid for that representation? No, not if they're worth their salt. They wouldn't. No,
because it's double the work. You're doing both sides of the deal.
Double the work,
double the paperwork,
definitely double the litigation issues.
Yes,
so not good.
Yeah,
and not good for transparency either.
And you know, this really, to be honest with you, hasn't really been accepted yet. So this hasn't ultimately gone to effect, right? Because it's still pending. Bottom line is that the NAR introduced more fairness and transparency, which I agree. We both agree that it's good to be more transparent up front, right?
Yeah.
In the real estate commission structure. It also presents new challenges and considerations for all parties involved. If you have questions about the evolving news, always reach out to one of us.
Keep an eye on our channels.
Don't rely on the media because they blow it way out of proportion. And it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a between the sellers and buyer battle, right? You got all these people commenting on my channel saying that it's about time the sellers don't pay for the buyer's commission. You know,
these are not real sellers, folks.
Yeah,
by the
they're
way.
not. They're saying,
this is
you
not
know,
what real sellers
agents
say.
are greedy and they don't deserve the commission. And then the buyers that can't afford to even pay their agent shouldn't even be buying a home. I mean, some really snarky comments out there. And it's gotten very ugly. And the point of this lawsuit was to avoid steering. But personally, in my opinion, it's just going to cause more steering, because if we don't know we're going to get paid and if the buyers can't afford to pay us, then I'm not going to show that property.
They're going to cause some desperate situations, no doubt about it. And I think for the agents worth their salt and know how to live in this business that is ever changing. It's always been changing.
Right.
We're gonna rise to the top. But you're going to find that a lot of people can't do that. And unfortunately, I think it's going to hurt people out there. So be careful. Keep an eye on our channels. We're definitely doing our best to give you more information. There has been limited information about this. So some of what we're saying could change. We should probably caveat everything with that.
Yeah, and we'll be doing our market update, not next week, but the following week.
Yep.
So stay tuned to that, where we probably will have more update information on it. But we did have a couple more questions. Feel free to ask away, guys.
You're welcome for the information, Just Julie.
Yep.
Won't be long.
Okay.
So go ahead. Won't be long until IT entrepreneurs put together websites not connected with National Association of Realtors or MLSs, where the listing agents can post their buyer realtor compensations. You have nailed it on the head, Zunif. This is exactly what I've been alluding to. This is where I think things, the breakdown of the MLS, the death of the realtor. The death of the realtor. That is actually my little video on this. It'll go over some of the same stuff. And when I put it up, I think tomorrow maybe, that's what I've talked about, is the slow death of the realtor, which
Well,
doesn't mean there won't be real estate agents.
I think it'll weed out the weak links.
It's certainly at first that's going to be.
If you're a
first
strong agent, the strong will remain strong. They will still be in the market like us. But it will definitely weed out the weak agents.
Yeah, and I do believe that's part and parcel of what they're going after as far as these real estate tech companies. They want control over what the multiple.
Well, they got jealous and they saw what agents were making, and not all agents make that much money, but they're going to be only hourly based people. They're not going to be accessible. Have you ever tried to get a hold of a big team that they only work Monday through Friday and you can't reach them on the weekends? That's how your buyer's agents are going to be. They're not going to work on the weekends because they're going to be probably salary or hourly. Something. Yeah, something like that. So that's how it's going to be. So it's going to be very difficult for buyers. So my opinion is it's going to change the whole real estate world unless other policies come into place where they can fix some of this uncertainty.
Yeah. This is where, I think we got some other shoes to drop, so to speak. We know this hasn't been fully gone through the final approval through the courts where it has to go through that. It's likely that it'll get approved and whatnot. But to be quite honest, I think we've had very little word from the top as to exactly how to deal with this. That is going to come. I think that there.
You mean the top from like
NAR, National Association of Realtors, and even our own, even individual brokers.
Well, I get emails all the time on it.
Yeah, but it's a lot of the same information.
Yeah,
it's not like my point being is that this will unfold and we'll know exactly what it means.
Right. But the point of it is not to believe what mainstream media is talking about, saying that the death of the salesperson or the commission is been set at 6% because it has always been negotiated. And that just because they no longer can disclose the commission percentage on the MLS for the buyer's agent doesn't mean that the sellers no longer have to pay the buyer's agents.
Yep. And you can keep us you can keep us to our words here and see what happens over time. We've been really good at this stuff. When there's waves of this craziness out there, we've been the ones that very often, we're not the only ones out there with sanity, but we're the ones sort of preaching sanity. And here's what really we think is going to happen.
Right.
I think we're going to end up being in that same boat as we look back on this time.
It'd be fun to go over it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've gabbered on for another question. Yeah.
We've got one last question. We have gabbered on. We haven't gone on and on, but that's if you sign a buyer agreement saying buyer will pay you and seller isn't offering a co-op, then how do you collect your money if the buyer decides not to pay you? It's a good question. And you have to go after them. And that's a real fun time.
Yes.
Does that stop a closing? I think it would in this case. I think you could have that. But I'm not an attorney, so maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah. But will realtors just be suing buyers for their money? Yes.
You got to.
We don't work for free.
How do we secure that payment? Seems very risky. I think these are some of the Pandora's box that I've spoken about. You're really hitting it on the head today.
I think what's going to happen is, a thought just came to my mind when you're asking this, that the buyers will have to maybe do a deposit of, say, $5,000. Just $5,000 came to my mind, and escrow, and then when it closes, then they get the remaining money. But if they don't close and they walk away, then the agent still gets that $5,000.
And how's that going to work with certain loan programs? They're not going to allow that.
Well, no, it's not for a loan. It's just money.
No, I know.
But the buyers are going to have to qualify extremely. It's going to be harder for buyers to qualify because now not only down payment and closing costs, but now they have to come up with money for their agent.
Is this going on the settlement statement? It is, and that means money that needs to go and get looked at by the
lender. Yep, exactly. So that has to be disclosed to the lender.
We got problems.
Yep.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
God, we're all the way at the end of this video. If you made it all this way and you just got a big nugget, actually, because we need to be asking that question a little bit more. How's that going to work?
Yeah. Great, Zunif. That's such a great question that as agents, we're going to have to verify with their lender if they're even going to be able to afford us before we even show houses. What's going to happen is we're going to require approval letter before signing that buyer agreement.
Yeah, there's going to be, God, this just opens up a whole lot, doesn't it? Well, it will fall into place one way or the other. I do believe that.
Yeah. I mean, smart agents, just to recap, if you're working with a buyer, one, they need to sign a buyer brokerage agreement with their agent and to provide approval letter or proof of funds that they can financially buy a home and also financially afford them.
Yeah. I would say final thing, if you're really worried about this, you're on the clock. Get us now and get your property.
True.
ASAP.
You're on the clock until July 2024. And I've seen an influx of buyers out there wanting to scurry through and buy so they don't have to pay.
Yeah, this could be a real issue.
And that's why I'm saying that the market's going to shift after July.
It's a possibility, at least a temporary sort of like
until they get all,
And that's why I say we still have all these balls in the air and like how are they going to drop and exactly what it means. We're not attorneys, folks, and we don't.
Unless Biden or like the president or somebody does a law where they give people funds to pay their agents.
That's embarrassing.
Well, it could happen.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, well.
Yeah, we'll get you down payment assistance so that you can pay us.
Yeah. Well, they wouldn't qualify for down payment assistance, but yeah, some kind of funding fee from the presidential people.
Yeah. We will figure it out, folks, and we'll have more for you.
Yes. If you have any questions, I have posted a link down in the description below for this blog post. And if you want to reach either of us, our information is down also in the description below. As always, we're always here for anything you need. Stay tuned in a couple of weeks when we will do our market update, see who won the bets. I think I will. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, either way.
Yeah. Anyway, it's always fun and competitive.
Yep.
But see how the market fared for March 2024, right?
Yeah.
I think the market was on fire. What do you think?
It was moving.
Yeah,
it was moving. I'm seeing that there's been some, we'll
talk about that next week.
Hey, guess what I want to say. I guess. Thank you, Ange. Thank you for having me come and talk about this. This is therapy for me.
It's for us because we get to just.
We need this, right?
Yeah.
We need this. All right. Got a lot on our minds about this.
Yeah.
So thank you, as always, for having me on your channel.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
I mean, it affects a lot of people, and the good ones are stressing. Everyone's stressing because the whole real estate market as we know it is upside down, and we don't have the complete answers of what's really going to happen and what the best practices are, right?
Not just yet.
Yeah.
But mindset going to get us there. All right.
Question. We can use you now to see homes, and on July 20th, we need a contract.
Right. Yep. Right now, there is no actual requirement that we have to have you sign that document.
Right.
Although I would say that probably a lot of agents are going to start practicing that.
And a lot of agents have already been doing it, but us have never made it a mandatory thing for our buyers because, again, I never believed in buyer brokerage agreements. That's just a personal. It's my personal choice.
It's a bit of a new loop, and I'm not sure that like how right now can I justify at this very moment saying, hey, if I don't get paid by the seller after July, if you're still working with me, you're going to owe me X amount of dollars.
So I bet you a lot of agents going forward will start having them sign that buyer brokerage agreement just to cover their tail, because oftentimes clients are not ready to buy it right now.
Yeah.
They're years out, months out.
Agents understand how this is going to work, though. A little nugget here too, because I did watch an attorney break this down. If that seller happens to be willing to give you a 3% and you only got your buyer to say that they'll give you 2.5%, you can't get the 3%. You can only get the 2.5%. That's part of this deal.
Can you do like a 2.5 to 3%? Like do it?
You can't do a range. It needs to be exact. That's part of the buyer's broker's agreement. The way it works is that it's an exact. This is why it gets like threading the needle a little bit. You know?
I wish we were ready now. Take care and thank you. You're very welcome, Julie.
It'll work out for you, Julie. Don't worry about it.
Don't stress over it.
Yep. We're going to stress over it so that you don't have to.
Exactly. All right, folks. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Rock on.
And do it peacefully.
And
we'll see you on the next one. Uh-oh. When you get confused, listen to the music play for sure. Grateful Dead, Lionel.
There you
Peace
go.
out, guys.
Love it.
Bye.